Sky Squad, we are back in the building. It's your boy DJ Richie Skye, and we are back to talk about Braxton family values. Well, I keep wanting to call it Braxton family values, and this name change is just getting the best of me. The Braxtons, okay? Not to be confused with the Braxton family values, also on WeTV. Um, a couple of things. This episode actually it was good. It was also tough at times because watching Trina's therapy session, I I'm still trying to not identify so much with what she is going through that it doesn't take me back and sort of re-traumatize me with some things that I felt like I have been dealing with over the past 2 years as well. And 2 years, you would think that grief is like you would be over it. You know what I'm saying? Not really over it per se, but that you would have figured out a way to move through it. And I feel like that's the thing with grief. You do find a way to move through it, but you just be moving through it. And that's really it, right? So maybe I need to talk to somebody too. Anyway, this episode was called Family Matters, and it says the Braxtons are still mending from grief counseling, but when Tracy's son Kevin Jr. goes missing, his aunties spring into action. Toni struggles to find balance with her health and work, and Tamar teams up with Miss E to fulfill a lifelong dream. So we can pretty much break this episode down into a couple of different segments for each particular sister. Just a couple of things that I think I noticed. I'm gonna give this episode a 9. I don't feel like I got the full 10 out of it, but it wasn't a bad episode. I don't know if you guys picked up on this and it just made me wonder, like, did Toni not give them the clearances to use whatever song she was rehearsing to in the actual show? Because I noticed that when Toni was rehearsing and she was doing a little dance number with the backup dancers, that they played a dub track over top of whatever song she was singing. I could have swore it was he wasn't man enough, but I don't know that for certain because she got a couple of up tempo numbers, right? You know, that I can think of. But I was kind of like, why they ain't y'all ain't gonna give us a little Tony Braxton? Like, we can't hear it. So I thought that was interesting, and I was like, she ain't getting that clearance, baby. Either she didn't or the label did. So there's that because typically when you get that clearance, you either get it to license for a certain period of time or you get it in perpetuity. If you get it in perpetuity, that means that they get they can utilize that for as long as I mean for however long, right? I think that's one of the reasons why you don't see R&B divas on, personally speaking. But that's a different story for a different day. Um, the other thing that I feel like, so let's start with Toni. Okay, Toni is in LA. She is rehearsing for her tour with Cedric the Entertainer. And, Toni has always felt a little, I don't know. I always feel like there's a slight bit of emotional distance with Toni in the show, but I cannot discern if that is because she is the living legend, Toni Braxton. You know what I'm saying? And she is one of those entertainers who is, I think, one of the greats of our time for a lot of us, right? Like, I'm talking about when songs was on the radio. You know what I'm saying? Like, if y'all wondering why I got this hood on, it's because I ran out of my Black Girl Magic sunscreen, and it ain't called Black Girl Magic, it's called Black Girl Sunscreen. But so I feel like my entire face is white, and y'all know I do my walking in the morning. So anyway, I digression. So I just feel like there's always a little bit of distance between her and what we get on the show, but that just could be me, and that could just be her personality. She is definitely still concerned about her health, as she should be. I was reading a lot of comments, and I felt like a lot of, I don't really say I felt like, but I was reading some comments online, and I was just reading about how a lot of people felt like she leaned on her lupus to get out of things because she could not fly per her doctor's orders, okay? Because there's the lupus, there's the heart condition, there's some blood issues as well. And she's just advised to not fly that often, I think, and probably not that close together. Like back-to-back flights probably aren't good for her. So I just, I kind of wish people would give her a bit more grace because I cannot imagine, as somebody who suffers from anxiety myself, I can't imagine what the anxiety is over your health, which you cannot control. I am certain that that has to take a mental toll on someone. And I can't imagine what it takes to feel like I need to work. You know what I'm saying? But I'm afraid to really do it because I don't know if I have a contracted date. Am I going to get sick? Like that's got to be very scary. So I just feel like people need to give her a bit of grace as as I'm certain tries to figure out like at every new stage how best to maneuver through what she's going through health wise. What I can say is that body is snatched, okay? Sickness or what? I mean, it definitely ain't impacted her and the way she looks physically because she is looking good. And I think that is to be praised, okay? Um, so there's that. I want to dive into I think the most compelling, well, there are several compelling factors to this show, but I want to get into the storyline that is Kevin Jr. In this episode, as we read in the synopsis from YouTube TV and from WeTV, we learned that Kevin is missing. Like the sisters have not heard from him, and so it is throughout this episode that we learn that Trina and Vaughn, her husband, and Towanda and Sean, her man, are going to be taking a trip up to the DC area to come check on Kevin Jr. to find out what's going on with him. As it turns out, we learned via a phone call earlier in the episode that Kevin was arrested for something, as we talked about in the last episode. But it has something to do with it sounds like it has something to do with the divorce, or I don't know what it is, but Towanda said specifically, we don't need to get into the details of the arrest. But what we do know is that he was released on his own recognizance. Now, I do respect that they don't want to share what that is, but as a viewer, it feels incomplete when you don't share what it is. Clearly, Kevin Jr. has agreed to be a part of this show. My curiosity is wondering, is this a way for him to also, get paid from the show in the way that maybe Tracy would have gotten paid? And maybe that's a way to, sort of honor her by taking care of, her son financially by allowing him to appear on the show in such a major way, given that he is such a large factor in what Towanda and Trina are really experiencing. So, and they all are experiencing it, but I'll say Trina and Towanda the most because they seem to have the most interaction with him. So that's just my natural curiosity. Is actually none of my business, but I still have to wonder because it's on the screen. So it's only natural for us to be curious about, well, what happened? Why was he arrested? I mean, we've talked about it, and it's being talked about. Everything is being discussed around it. Tell us why. But again, I also have to respect that they don't want to share because I'm sure it's sensitive. So Tell me how you feel about that. And you could be real in the comment section. I think that there's nothing wrong with admitting to wanting to know because it's being talked about. And people can't expect us to not have questions about something that we're seeing on the screen. So there's that element that we are dealing with. Again, by episode's end, we find out that I guess when he got arrested, they kept his phone, and the production team has, been able to track him down via their father and figure out, what's going on with him. In next episode, we'll get to know exactly what's going on with Kevin Sr. and why maybe we haven't seen him, and if he will indeed film a scene with his son. So, moving on, and we'll have to wait to discuss that next week because I don't really know what's going on. I have my assumptions, but we will wait until next week when we see it. We see Miss E get together with Trina and Towanda and communicate her disappointment in what happened at the therapy session. And, they just kind of, Tawanda's like, we just have to respect where people are. Like, as we maneuver through this grief, but what we learn is that the sisters haven't come together like that in that way in 2 years. That's odd to me. I don't know why that's odd to me. Like, I don't know. Like, my sister lives across the country. So, but, she does come home. So it's interesting that with Tamar in Atlanta, Miss E in Atlanta, Towanda in Atlanta, Trina in Atlanta, y'all ain't getting together like that? Like, what's really go on? And why? Like, because it can't be, Miss E tells us that she saw a shift within the girls when it came down to the show taking off, the original show taking off. That could be true, but she addresses people online saying that she is the one who needs to take the ownership of their divide. And I would counter with that they are grown women. Now, granted, there could have been something growing up that was maybe a factor. I would wager to believe that there is, and maybe it was a subconscious thing. It could have been, their parents going through it, you know what I'm saying, and separating or splitting up, you know what I mean? But I don't know. At this age, we still also have to look at these women as adults, right? We learn also too that Tamar has been in therapy and she continues to go to therapy. But I have to wonder, like, I know this is going to sound harsh, and I don't mean it to sound harsh, but what is she telling her therapist when she has these sort of outbursts online? Like, I don't understand. Like, what is that a result of, like, I'm still in therapy, so I ain't got there yet. So in which case I can be like, okay, you know what? You right, sister. Okay, you still working on yourself, which I get it. But I mean, we all go through stuff. But I think as adults, we don't all spray it on social media. And so I wonder why she does that. Because when you watch this particular episode, we're reminded of the effervescence that is Tamar. She's spending the more of this episode is with her and her mom. And we see her a little bit with Trina when Trina pops up on their cooking show. But you really see the light in Tamar when she's talking to or about her mom. And I think that that's an interesting dynamic. And we learned that she says that she's in Atlanta by assignment because she realized that when Tracy was sick, her mom was alone a lot. So I take that to mean that the rest of the sisters will probably be visiting Tracy a lot. I don't know if I would assume Toni was a part of that when she could, right? But I don't know. I don't know. But it did remind me of what I think what you feel when you fall in love with Tamar on a reality TV show is, oh my God, there she is. That's what we want to see. Um, but there's something about her in conjunction with her sisters that brings out a different side of her. And I wonder why. That's interesting to me. And I feel like they really need to dive into that. And I don't feel like anybody has been able to really break that down for us. I would like to see her and Towanda have a one-on-one either counseling session or just a one-on-one conversation, like, old school housewives style. Like, and I don't mean that in like a combative way, but I mean like the one-on-one sit down. That's where some of the best magic of housewives goes down. The one-on-one sit down where we are either going to iron out our issues or one of us going to walk up out of here and leave. I mean, and the group scenes. But I do feel like sometimes Housewives now has relied too much on, so much so on group scenes for the chaos that they lose the magic of the intimacy of the one-on-one where we get into some nitty-gritty. And because Trina and Towanda aren't having the one-on-one, I just feel like we don't see the issue get resolved, whatever it may be. So that was pretty much the episode of the Braxtons. It was good. It had its light moments. We did see, Towanda with her kids. We see Trina with Vaughn, and they kind of discuss her therapy session. I did not get too into the therapy session that Trina had because, again, she is, and they put the trauma disclaimers up there, which I did think was healthy. Because it does get heavy when Trina has those sessions and she has to dive deep. And I think it's heavy when it resonates. For me, it resonates. And for I think a lot of you, it probably resonates too. So it does feel like a little bit of a hard watch. But I think it's healthy at a certain point too to see someone going through and know that, oh my gosh, she's putting into words what I'm experiencing. So it's helpful. It's helpful. So that's my thoughts on the Braxtons, season 1, episode 3. I think next week we're going to be getting to a lot more chaos. And I'm glad they're balancing out. I mean, I was hoping we would see some of the stuff that we used to see on Braxton Family Values, like Toni preparing for a concert. We got to see that. We're seeing Tamar and Miss Evelyn on the cooking show. So we did get those sprinkles of light moments too. And I did enjoy that. So, kudos to the production team. As they continue to piece these episodes together, we continue to see the editing, the behind the scenes, the production, and the way it's coming together. I like that in this evolution of reality TV because as we evolve, the genre has to evolve too. So if you're looking for some really good reality TV that feels like family, this is the show for you. Definitely tune in, tap in, and get turned on to the Braxtons. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Hit that like button, smack it up, flip it, and rub it down. And leave us a comment in the comment section. And with that being said, I will catch you in the next video.